Parents of children with severe heart conditions have written to the Health Minister telling him the country's paediatric cardiac service is in crisis. They say their kids' open heart surgeries are often delayed, in some cases up to 8 times, because there aren't enough surgeons, beds or resources. With a growing waiting list and growing population, they fear the system can't cope. Michelle Cook has the story.
On the 6th of November 2018, my son's cardiologist from Starship said to me, "I'll be honest, our surgery list is in crisis mode." And then he said something about the two being down to only 2 surgeons instead of 3, and those 2 surgeons being, I can't remember whether he said exhausted or burnt out, but he said something that made me worry about whether or not they were getting enough rest and breaks, and worry about my son having surgery, open heart surgery.
Michelle Burns was so concerned about what the cardiologist told her, she wrote down his exact words. The Palmerston North mum is one of 4 Heart Kids parents who have written to the Health Minister David Clark expressing their fears about an underfunded system that they say is stretched to capacity. They and a further 60 parents say Starship, which is the only hospital in the country where open heart surgery on children is performed, has been under pressure for years. They're worried about constant delays, overcrowded wards, not enough paediatric intensive care beds, and the fact for the past 2 years there have been only 2 surgeons for the entire population, when in the past there were 3.
I feel like we've gotten to this point because more and more heart children have lived, and there's a bigger population of heart children, and then they haven't planned for the expansion of the service as population grows, or the heart kids population grows. And then I feel like it's going to go backwards, like children are going to be dying because there's not timely service.
Michelle's son Mitchell has been in the system since the day he was born, and like most children with congenital heart conditions, that's likely to be the case for the rest of his life. He had surgery at 5 days old, 3 months old, and was scheduled to have surgery last October. The 4-year-old was so unwell he couldn't move his body weight without puffing and could no longer go to daycare.
My son was using a pushchair, like as if it was a wheelchair, when he was like 3.5, 4 years old. And he wouldn't even walk from the lounge to his bedroom without asking me to come with him, and then halfway down the hallway he'd ask me to pick him up and carry him to his bedroom.
Michelle says Mitchell was the right weight for surgery, and with his health declining, needed it desperately.
Me and my mum and my husband had all booked annual leave for the surgery, and then they ring and say that it's been rescheduled, and then they ring again and say it's been rescheduled, and then the third time they ring to say it's been rescheduled, they say, well, actually, the date you got given in October, and then November, and then later in November, actually now we're just not even going to give you another date this year, we're looking at February.
She wasn't having a bar of that and immediately wrote a letter to Starship saying Mitchell urgently needed surgery. That prompted a fly-in visit to Auckland, assessments and surgery several days later. But Michelle and other parents say they shouldn't have to fight for their children to get timely treatment, and say it wasn't like this 4, 6 or 8 years ago.
My name is Melanie Walsh, and I'm parent to a child with complex congenital heart defects.
Some parents say their child's surgery has been delayed 5 times, and Melanie Walsh, who penned the letter on behalf of the other parents, says she knows of one child whose surgery has been put off 8 times before it finally went ahead. She says a major contributing factor is a lack of PICU beds.
The main problem is that unit services the whole of New Zealand, so if an acute case comes in, a child is desperately sick, or it could be any kind of surgery or a cancer patient, then open heart surgery, which can be deemed elective even though it's necessary, can be pushed off that list to take the acute case.
The Auckland District Health Board says since 2016 the number of beds has increased from 17 to 22, and it's looking at further expanding bed capacity. But Melanie says New Zealand's heart kids can't wait for increased capacity. They need it now. She is in touch with families all over the country and says many children are waiting too long for treatment, and for some, Their health deteriorates with each day that passes.
It's really stressful for everybody. And the kids, if they're older, if they're not little babies, they know what they're going in there for. So they have to prepare themselves mentally, and the parents have to support them. So, it's putting a lot of stress on families that are already worried about what's going to happen in the surgery.
The Auckland DHB says there are currently about 55 to 65 children on the surgery waitlist, up from 40 to 50 children in previous years. It says that's due to, quote, intensive care unit and surgical capacity. No one was available for an interview, but in a statement the DHB says surgeries have needed to be rescheduled at times, which means some patients may not receive surgery as promptly as they, their families or the DHB would like. Decisions were always informed by clinical need. It confirms one of 2 cardiac paediatric surgeons is leaving next month, leaving just 1 permanent surgeon. However, the DHB says locum surgeons will fill in until a new surgeon starts in December. In the statement, Starship Director Surgical, Dr. John Becker, says,
recruitment to our paediatric cardiac surgery team is well underway. We've had some excellent applicants and anticipate having a full team of 3 permanent surgeons soon. In the meantime, I want to assure families that we are fortunate to have excellent specialist surgeons assisting us on a temporary basis. We review our cardiac waiting list daily to ensure that patients with the greatest clinical need are prioritised, and that all our patients are receiving safe care in a clinically appropriate timeframe.
Melanie and other parents say the Starship staff are wonderful, but it's a lack of funding which is the crux of the issue. They're appealing to the Health Minister for more money to provide more beds and more surgeons to help New Zealand kids, including Melanie's son Patrick, who is likely to need further surgery in the next few years.
Is that surgeon going to be working a double shift before they do my kid's surgery? Is there going to be anyone available to do what he needs done in a timely fashion? The surgeons in there are great, but they can't work 24 hours a day, and if there aren't enough of them.
Are you scared?
Yes, I'm scared.
Are other parents scared?
Yeah, they are pretty petrified, which is why it's come to us wanting to know, where is the future proofing for our children, because they're going to be in the system for their whole lives.
And that piece from Michelle Cook, if you're just listening, you can go back online. It'll be put up there later this evening and also on our Facebook page. Now, the Health Minister, David Clark, declined to be interviewed, but said in a statement that from time to time, any hospital procedure can be delayed for reasons outside a hospital's control. He says he wants to acknowledge the anxieties and concerns any parent has when their child is seriously unwell. And he appreciates the time and effort these Heart Kids families have taken to write. And the Health Minister says he'll be responding to them directly. The invitation for the Health Minister to come on the program still stands.